Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And, welcome to Season 11 finale. We're episode, I guess, 110?
110.
110.
Yeah.
Oh, we should have done this for the next one.
111?
Yeah, because Lord of the Rings opens on Bilbo's 111th birthday.
Okay, well, maybe we just back this up and make this and do this for 111.
No, because then we got to figure out what we're going to do for today's episode. we got a great episode coming up for you. We're going to talk about the Lord of the Rings set. Not necessarily a set review, not necessarily a not set review. We're just going to... I took a couple hours, sifted through some cards, made a list of things that I wanted to talk about. Bruce did the same. And we have yet to talk about what those are with each other. So that's what we've got here.
This isn't going to be like a Temple's Treasures thing where we're going to be somehow surprised by overlap.
No.
We've each picked a lot of cards.
Yeah.
We're going to have overlap. There just is.
And, I mean, I honestly think, too, like, this isn't going to be like, oh, like, we think this is a 7 out of 10 type of thing. Like, it is just going to be unfiltered, well, until the edit, thoughts about these cards, about the set. This is coming from two people who enjoy Lord of the Rings, but I know personally, I'm not, like, I haven't seen the movies in, like, a couple years, and... yeah, I don't know. Like, I really enjoy the setting. It feels very, I mean, like, it is, like, the basis for a lot of, like, kind of medieval fantasy type stuff. And, what couldn't you love about these two things coming together? And I think going into it, I had this expectation of, like, wow, it's going to be, like, very, like... If you don't get the references, it's not going to be enjoyable type of thing. But I think that overall, we'll see. I think I came out of looking at all of these cards more excited than I thought I would be. Yeah. How do you feel about it as of now?
It's funny because the more I go through the cards, the more I think to myself, man, I thought I was way more into Lord of the Rings than I apparently am. Because there was a lot in here that did just go screaming over my head. And I think that's more a product of, I have not read these books in ages. It has been a very long time since I've read these books. Andy, I suspect I read these books before you were alive. That's Probably. How long ago it was. So a lot of this is sort of new. And honestly, that works out just fine. But It's interesting because you see a lot of... I like what Wizards has done because I think there's a lot of cards that are really powerful and cool. But at the same time, there are some cards that are very clearly not super powered. But you're like, right, that makes perfect sense. It's exactly what that card should do.
Yeah. I really like... and I've got a few that I have marked here that I'm like, the flavor on this is astounding in terms of like mechanical, there's a word for that, Ludo narrative. But I feel like it did really well in those aspects. And I think overall, the two takeaways I came out from this are, I really want to get a draft box because I think that this would be an amazing set to draft. And I want to get the commander decks because they seem like a lot of fun. I haven't actually looked at the list. I just like went on Scryfall and looked at the cards.
Right.
But like you can see some certain through lines that are just like, oh, this is really cool. And I think that the decks that you can build from even just the legendary creatures are creative. The things that I like to do in Commander. But yeah.
I can see a lot of new Commander decks coming out of this where legends matter
Yeah.
really, really comes to the fore. There are a lot of legendary creatures in here, and a lot of them are legendary creatures that I wouldn't want as my commander. They're just, they're basic. They're not super exciting for me as a commander, but as part of the 99, that sounds great. And when you've got, cards in your 99 that say, if you're, legendary creatures or legendary permanents get a bonus of some kind. I mean, yeah, I can really see this. This is going to be a great set for you.
Yeah. I just looked it up. They're between both commander set and draft set.
Yep.
There are 121 legendary creatures out of 581 cards. So that's about 21% of the cards are could be your commander.
Yeah.
Not necessarily good at it, but are legal.
Yeah.
Choices.
Technically.
Yeah.
Right. I'll mention one card just right off the bat that isn't a reprint, but it's called Flowering of the White Tree.
Oh yes.
It's a white legendary enchantment for white. Legendary creatures you control get +2/+1 and have Ward 1. Non-legendary creatures you control get +1/+1. And it's real easy to look at a card like this and say, oh, I'm only ever going to put this in a deck with a lot of legends. But, folks, Crusade was a card that existed a long time ago. It costs white, and it said, I believe it was white creatures gain or get +1/+1. This is just better, straight better. Crusade also the card Crusade also came with a whole lot of baggage, and they've sort of tried to set that aside. Well, here now you've got a perfectly good replacement for Crusade if Crusade is still in any of your decks. But this card is going to be good in a deck that only has a commander as a legendary creature, even if that's the only one. Creatures you control alone get +1/+1. It's not non-token. It's not token. It's just your dudes get +1/+1. Oh, and by the way, your commander gets +2/+1 and also has Ward 1, which isn't huge, but it's just that little bit annoying.
Yeah, it screws up their math in ways that, like, if you're a fairly casual group like we are, what that means is that they're going to have a chance to take it back. They're going to be like, oh, sorry. But, like, if you're in any sort of group that, like, it's like, maybe, or even, like, I think for our group, like, if it was, like, the 5th time somebody was like, no, it's got Ward 1. You have to either pay 1 or it's going to be countered. If you've had to remind people enough, like, there's going to be points where it's like, no, you're not taking that back. It gets countered unless you pay 1. And I think that's not nothing.
It isn't. It isn't. And I'm talking about this in a card, this card in a deck that just runs white. And it can be a 2, 3, 4, 5 color deck. It doesn't matter. And I don't care if there are other legendary creatures. So to me, this is all upside.
Yeah.
It's got a huge bonus on the top, and most of the time you're only ever going to see this in decks where that bonus kicks in. So.
Yeah, and this is obviously, like, really good as a limited bomb, like, in, and if you're going to be playing this as a draft set, like, it's going to do real well in your 40 card deck where white generally cares about legends anyway. And if you, like, even possible CDH Teshar decks, or even, like, lower powered Teshar decks, like, this is fantastic.
The only issue that I could see with it is that it's a legendary enchantment, which means you can't have a second one. Well, we're playing Commander. You're probably not going to have a second one. I don't know that you're necessarily going to want to copy this spell to give all your creatures +2/+2. There's probably other stuff that you could do, other permanents you could want to copy for that. But I'm just mentioning it because it's there.
Yeah. And, like, yeah. It's 2 mana. It's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of the things that I found throughout this set are the legends themselves. I found pretty cool.
Okay.
Whether it's I'm like, oh, like I want to make a deck out of this, or just like I think that this should go in my X deck, you know. And I think that it made me just like real excited for this set in ways that I just didn't expect. So I'm going to start with Boromir, Warden of the Tower. 2 and a white. Legendary creature, human soldier. Vigilance. When an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter it. That's cool.
Yeah.
But you can also sacrifice him. And creatures you control gain indestructible till the end of turn. The ring tempts you.
Yes.
We're not going to go over necessarily the ring tempting you as a mechanic. I've linked below the Loading Ready Run rules primer for that kind of thing. But I'm guessing that most, if not all of you, have listened to a podcast or watched something on YouTube that has explained it. It's very similar to Dungeons, but it's like it's more of an emblem than like an adventure type thing. Once it's done, it's done. But I found this like just like a good utility. It doesn't matter that it's a legendary creature. I just found that it's a selfless savior type thing where it's just sacrifice it to give creatures you control indestructible. Also, just like real good flavor, you know, because he dies in service of the Fellowship.
Right.
This is coming from a man who's never read the books, but has seen the movies a number of times. So, yeah, that's my first one.
My first one, I'm going to go straight to the big guns. Gandalf the White. Gandalf the White, it's 3 white for a 4/5 legendary creature with flash. You may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. And then if a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time.
It's messed up, Bruce. It's messed up.
Okay, so this is everything Elish Norn should have been. It gives you stuff. It doesn't take shit away from your opponents. This is what you want, because with Elish Norn, your opponents are forced to get rid of her. With Gandalf, they're forced to get rid of Gandalf because Gandalf is really good, but they're not forced to get rid of Gandalf because it's interrupting their play.
Yeah.
So, and I love this. I think Gandalf the White is, this is a spectacular card.
This is sick.
If you put flash and may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash by itself on the card, that would be enough. If you put just the bottom text on the card, that would be enough. But you're getting both, and it's ridiculous.
The first part is essentially Wrath Capuchin.
Right.
Historic spells you have, or you cast have flash. And then that second part is great. It is exactly what you want.
Gandalf takes your deck and speeds it up by at least one turn, just for the flash ability. The fact that you can hold off until the end of your last opponent's turn, play your stuff then, means you get to keep all that mana up for the entire time. Then you burn it, then you take your turn, and immediately pass. That's...
Yeah.
Look, there's a reason that blue is powerful, and that is one of the reasons. Because it looks like they can always do something to mess with you. While with Gandalf out there, everyone has to assume that there's something that you could do if you have mana up. So, Gandalf, amazing.
My next one, I have just so many, you know? Let me see how far white goes down. Okay. My next one's Rosie Cotton of South Lane. I just adore this card. It's a 1/1 for 2 and a white. She's a halfling peasant, and when she enters the battlefield, you create a food token. Sure, whatever. Whenever you create a token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. What I'm thinking, I mean, I feel like they must be regretting Academy Manufactor, because there are so many times, and maybe not even necessarily with Rosie at the helm, but like there are so many times, especially in like black and white or red and white or some sort of Mardu thing, you're just creating token after token after token. And this is one of the few cards that doesn't say, like, this triggers once per turn in this set. And say with an Academy Manufactor that says whenever you create a treasure, a food, or a clue, you create each instead. So this enters, you create a food, you create one of each. And now you've got 3 +1 counters to distribute. Or say you have something that just creates, whenever something happens, you create an orc, or you create a some sort of token creature. Token creature comes down. It's essentially coming down with an additional +1 counter on it, just because every time you create a token, you get an additional counter. It's just nice value.
See, now I saw Rosie Cotton and I thought to myself, wow, this would go so well in a green-white deck. Because, of course, I immediately thought about Doubling Season, because I, of course, think of the Troublemaker card. Rosie comes in with Doubling Season out. It creates 2 food, because it's Doubling Season. 2 food. Oh, so now you're going to put 2 +1 counters on 2 different target creatures, or the same one, whichever you choose, as long as it's not Rosie. Okay, now you already mentioned Academy Manufactor. Now, I know that this is drifting into Christmas land to put all 3 of them together, but you start to see where this... I mean, Rosie is just sort of the start of what could turn into something fairly crazy. I love the idea of just staying in just white. I mean, Smothering Tithe. I've played it often enough to know that in the course of one round of play, you're probably getting... Well, at least bare 2. Minimum, you're going to get 2.
Yeah.
And with Rosie out, you've just added 2 +1/+1 counters to other creatures on the board. I mean, this doesn't take long, and great card.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's unassuming at first glance. It's nice. I like it.
Very nice. My next card, my last white card, because I only picked 3.
Okay.
Dawn of a New Age. It's an enchantment. It costs 1 and a white. It enters the battlefield with a hope counter on it for each creature you control. At the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from Dawn of New Age. If you do, draw a card. Then, if Dawn of New Age has no hope counters on it, sacrifice it, and you gain 4 life. So, 1, getting this towards the end of the game is essentially you're paying 2 mana to draw a card, because how many turns are you going to get? This is obviously better for the longer it can stay in play, and you can actually use it. My thought, though, was, okay, so the negative is that if you play it too early, you won't have any creatures out. Well, how long does it take white to get to 3 creatures? I mean, this is the card. You're going to play you can play a creature on turn 2. You can probably do one on turn 3 and another on turn 4, or maybe even 2 on turn 3. I think that if Dawn of New Age is played on turn 4, you're probably going to have 3 creatures. You'll probably get 3 hope counters, which means that at the end of the current turn, you're going to get to draw a card. And at the end of each of the following turns, you're going to draw a card. And then you get a 4 life. And I'm not worried about the 4 life part. It's the card draw that everybody's here for. Yeah. I know this is slow card draw, and I know that there's been a push to get your card draw at the start, and that makes sense if your game is going to end soon. But for people like me, where our games go 13, 15 turns, where a card like Phyrexian Arena is good. It's really good. It costs 3. You pay a life, you draw a card. Well, this one, it costs 2. And I get to draw a card.
You're going to draw a card immediately, too.
I'm going to draw it at the start of the end step. I don't even have to wait for my next upkeep.
Yeah.
So even if they can get rid of the enchantment, I still get at least the replacement for this card.
Right.
I think this is a very good card. I think that it's card draw that's unnoticed.
Yeah.
You know, when you get a spell that lets you draw 6 cards at once, everybody knows. It's like, oh, he drew 6 cards. He's going to have lots of good stuff, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Dawn of New Age could easily draw you 5. It just takes longer. It's still 5 cards. I'll take that. I like that quiet draw. People don't notice it. They don't pay attention to the fact that your hand is almost always full because you're playing a land, you're playing a spell and another spell, and you drew 2 cards. So you're losing a little, but you're not losing as fast as some of the other people. I like this card. I think it's a subtle card draw.
I like too that it's like faux, like monarchy. I mean, flavorfully, it's kind of like that too. But it's like monarchy that nobody can take away from you. Just kind of like wait it out until the king dies, type of thing.
Right, and the only downside to this is that you do need to have creatures on the board for it to truly be effective.
Yeah, and you're playing white. You probably have a lot of token creatures at some point. Yes. This is a good mid-game card. Obviously, it's a good end-game card too, for the most part. Like because you'll be getting a lot of counters, but like
you're going to get a lot of counters at the end game. But realistically, if it's the end game, you're probably only going to get to draw two cards from it. So a bunch of hope counters is great. It has this balance, and it may turn out that I'm way overestimating how quickly white can get creatures out on the board, but I don't think so. And I really think that if you've got 3 creatures, don't wait on this card. It's like, but next turn I'm going to have 6. Like, who cares? You get 3 cards and you can start drawing them now. 3 cards for 3 consecutive turns. I mean, that's for 2 white mana. I'll take that. I will take that every time. So,
and then my last white card, I think, is like the culmination of what they've been doing with white since Strixhaven. It's Forge Anew. It's white and 2 for an enchantment. It says when Forge Anew enters the battlefield, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. As long as it's your turn, you may activate equip abilities as any time you'd cast an instant, and you may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability you activate during each of your turns. There's a lot of dials on this. There's a lot of thought that went into this card, clearly, but I think that like they did a really good job of not making it too busted, but I think they did a good job of making it a powerful card. Obviously, the instant activation of equipment is powerful, but the fact that it's only on your turn is this is just for combat shenanigans, pretty much.
Right. Oh yeah, and obviously this isn't in every deck. You're looking for decks that run a lot of equipment. But when I saw this, I thought of Blackblade Reforged, and thought to myself, you know what? Now I could put it on a token creature. Because what is it? The equip cost is what, 7?
7, yeah. It's 3 for a legendary creature is 7.
Or with Forge Anew, as long as it's the first time you're equipping it, you equip it to one of your token creatures for free.
Yeah.
And then you get to swing. Hold your legendary creatures back. You don't have to risk them into combat. You can just send this token creature in with the Blackblade Reforged and go to town. I love that it's at instant speed. Lightning Greaves. Lightning Greaves at instant speed means nobody can do anything to your creatures on your turn.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just move the Greaves in response, and that alone might just be worth Forge Anew if that's something you want to try. But great card.
And that's not even like crazy. Like that's not like magical.
No, the card's not unreal or broken in any way. It's just a good card.
All right, I got a few for blue. I think I have 3. So let's quickly go through blue.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about possibly a break.
Sure.
Maybe we have overlap. Who's to say? What's your first blue one?
My first blue is... Where was it here? Press the Enemy.
Yeah. All right.
It's funny. Press the Enemy, to me, it doesn't... This is not a Lord of the Rings card. This is just a good card. Press the Enemy. It's 2 and 2 blue. It's an instant. It says return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost.
Yeah.
So counter their spell, and then you get to play something for free. Now, if you assume that the proper price for a counter spell is 2 blue,
yeah,
then essentially Press the Enemy is saying, for 2 mana, you get to play your next instant or sorcery for free.
Yeah, and you can play sorceries at instant speed. I mean, it's remand with a little extra, you know?
Yeah, and I appreciate that there are restrictions to this. I mean, if your opponent is playing a really good spell that only costs 2 or 3 mana, and the card you want to play in your hand costs 4, okay, yeah, you're out of luck. But, I mean, I just think this is really good.
I mean,
and
it counts the CMC on the stack, too. So, maybe they're about to Rift, and they pay, what is it, 7, 8?
Yeah, it's 7.
Then 7? Great, you know? Like, that's like a common scenario that you will find.
Yeah.
And, like, I had also saw this card, and I was like, this is just blue Electro Dominance. That's all this is.
Well, I have said over and over again, the reason I don't like playing a lot of blue spells is because essentially it's a counter spell. Great. And now it's done. Your card's gone and they've lost their card. Everybody else gets a benefit because you guys have lost your cards, but they haven't. Well, Press the Enemy says, I'm not losing my card. I'm still getting to play another card onto the battlefield. As far as I can see, the only real downside to Press the Enemy is you're using up 2 spells at once. But, I mean, we are in blue. Don't you have a full grip?
Yeah. You're using 2 spells, sure, but you're also only paying for 1.
Right, and that second spell is probably a card that's going to let you draw 3 more anyway.
Yeah. You get to choose that card. It's great.
Right. So, I can see that there's an issue in that, you know, you have to be a little bit careful, but realistically, as the game progresses, you know what you're going to counter. You know, if you're in the mid game, you're probably going to end up countering a spell that costs 4, just like Press the Enemy. As you get to the late game, you know, you're waiting for a Blasphemous Act. You're waiting for that capsize with the buyback. You're waiting for the big X spell. You're waiting for something that's going to cost a lot, because those are the cards you actually want to counter, as opposed to just the next thing they play. So, I like Press the Enemy. I like the idea that blue gets to stop you and then actually do something.
Yeah. My first blue card is Eoreth of the Healing House. 2 blue, legendary creature, human cleric. Tap, untap another target permanent, or tap, untap 2 other target legendary creatures. Which is 1/4. I like this card in like aggressive blue. So like maybe like, you know, some sort of Simic thing going on, or I could see personally using this in like a Leviathan deck or like a Sea Monsters deck, you know, where you attack every turn, no matter what. And then if somebody goes to attack you, you can tap her and then untap, say, your 2 8/8 Krakens from like Kioribes the Sea God or something. Or I guess those aren't legendary, but you get the idea. Where it does do the I like that there's the flexibility of like, you know, either a target legendary or a target permanent, just any of them, or a 2 target legendary creatures. Like I like that there's a bonus for it being legendary rather than like a prohibitive nature.
Right. Well, and I look at this and I see 1, untap another target permanent. Oh, you mean my land that taps for more than 2 mana? When you play Yorith, be sure that you make it really clear that this is not simply just a combo piece.
Right.
That's going to allow you to go off. Any card that says it taps to untap 2 other cards has the potential to create some sort of infinite loop. And when you see when your opponents see this card, they're going to be looking for that loop, or they're going to assume that Yorith needs to die, or you need to die. You need to make it real clear to them. No, I'm using this to untap cards so I can block, or so I can tap a land to get goofy mana, but not infinite.
Yeah.
Because once it's infinite, well, yeah, then this card's not long for the board.
I believe too. The thing where this really starts to make a lot more sense too is the first step of the ring tempting you. So with the ring tempting you, you pick a ring bearer, and then it gets the like however far you are with the ring tempting you.
Right.
It gets those abilities as long as the ring bearer. And I believe the first one is target or that creature becomes legendary.
Okay.
And gets some other ability, but
sure.
So like with this, you can turn unlegendary creatures legendary if it is the ring bearer.
Right.
Which is just fun.
Yeah.
I like the synergy there.
Yeah, it opens it up.
You got any more blue ones for us?
I have Storm of Saruman.
Ooh.
It's a 6 mana enchantment. It's 4 and 2 blue. It has Ward 3. I know, folks. I'm getting kind of sick of Ward on cards. I really am. It's just a little too easy for Wizards to do it. It's kind of bugging me, but hey, cards got Ward 3 on it.
I like it more than Hexproof, honestly. Hexproof is boring.
I do too, but I will say that once you get up to like Ward 2 and Ward 3,
just put Hexproof,
you're getting close to Hexproof on that. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it. Except the copy isn't legendary. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is just a matter of planning your turn.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Take your biggest, ugliest legendary creature. Now you've got a copy of it that isn't a copy. Take whatever spells, however you want to do this. You're getting free copies. It says when you cast your second spell each turn. So I can do it on your turn.
Yeah.
If I happen to have 2 instants, or I don't know, I got Gandalf out, and now I'm casting and artifacts on your turn. It's like, oh great, look, my second artifact. Yeah, it's gonna be a Soul Ring. I'll take 2 of them. Why not? This is really good. I think the only reason that I'm not freaking out about this is because it does cost 6.
Yeah.
So realistically, you're gonna tap out to get this, or have just enough mana up to protect it. You have to go through an entire round, and then you'll actually have mana up when you can start using it to try and get your free spells. So I think you're pretty late in the game. I don't see that happening too many rounds. However, if you get to do it twice, man, I'm kind of thinking we're done here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just got to be something.
Like you said, it's 6 mana. If you're in the position, or if you're late enough in a game, even limited, that you're playing this, like, it's not like you're coming out of nowhere with it. It's not like you're gonna just like win the game on the spot,
right? Just
out of nowhere. Like, people will be expecting big things, and it's great.
Yeah.
My last blue card is Scroll of Isildur. It's a saga. I think it's the only saga that I chose, because some of the sagas, like the sagas were fun flavorfully, like, you can see like the connections in the stories and stuff. And I think that it was a brilliant choice to like use them, because it is like the whole
Sure.
series is about like these legends, and then also like the things that are happening.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Please, when I read the end scroll, I just laughed.
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't a particularly good card, but it's so right on for flavor.
Yeah.
But anyways, Scroll of Isildur.
So the first chapter is gain control of up to one target artifact for as long as you control the scroll, and then the ring tempts you. So, it gives you a ring bearer, and then you can give the ring to that creature if you want.
Are you obliged to take Soul Ring?
I was thinking artifact creature this whole time, but I mean, like, there are plenty of. You got Soul Ring, you got, there are just so many artifacts here that. I mean,
I was
there are
just
a lot
thinking
of
the ring.
artifacts in Commander.
There might be one or two.
But so you got that.
Okay.
Second
Where's
chapter.
2?
Chapter 2 is tap up to 2 target creatures, put a stun counter on each of them. That's pretty good. It's like Time of
Nice.
Ice, but better.
Yep.
And then chapter 3, draw a card for each tapped creature target opponent controls. So, like, people will be attacking you during this because they don't want you to draw. Or maybe they'll stop attacking you because they don't want you to draw. Maybe they're either going to try to kill you so you don't draw, but then they'll have a bunch of tapped creatures. Then you draw a bunch, or maybe they've mellowed out and you get to draw 2 from the stun counter things. It just like each chapter feels good. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Andy, before we go to break,
Yeah.
I want to mention a card. I'm just going to mention the card, and then I'm going to immediately let it go. The Watcher in the Water is a 9/9 legendary Kraken. It has, well, I'm not going to read it because it has 9 lines of text in it, and they're in 3 separate paragraphs. Wizards, too many. No mas. No, I haven't read the card. I'm not going to. 9 lines of text. That I'm sure it does something obscene. It does something wonderful. Maybe it'll turn into one of my favorite cards, but that's just too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like what was the octopus, right? Like where it was like an 8/8 and it had 8 lines of text. There were 8 things with it. It's cute. It's a cute thing that they did. It's
right.
Just
I'm not looking forward to the
so
2020 creature with 20 lines of text.
Yeah.
But I will say, you were looking for a legendary Kraken earlier. You just got one. All right.
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll hopefully be a little bit more streamlined.
But we'll go blasting through this.
Yeah. But we'll be right back.
This episode of Temple of Falsepod is brought to you by Tolkien.
Did you say token?
Tolkien.
This episode of Temple of Falsepod is brought to you by Tolkien Creatures.
Technically, yes.
Hey, we're back. We got a long one for you. We're talking about Lord of the Rings, a notoriously notable, importantly long series.
We're going to keep this off of the extended version.
Yeah. We got an extended... Damn it, that was the joke you just made. We talked about white and blue so far. We're on to red. My first card here is Gorebag, because it's a funny...
What
no,
about
that's
black?
We already talked
We're
about...
on black.
We're talking about black now.
Yeah.
Excuse me, teacher. You skipped black. Gorebag is notably black. He is a legendary creature, orc soldier for black and 1. Gorebag of minus Morgul. He's a 2/2, so he's a bear. Whenever a goblin or orc you control deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. When you do, choose one, draw a card, or create a treasure token. What? This is insane. Like, the amount of goblin tokens there are, just in general,
Right.
like, this just turns into drawing your deck or creating treasure to create more goblins. And, like, this goes in so many sacrifice decks, whether it's red, black, or Jund, or,
Right.
I haven't heard anybody talking about this card, and it just feels broken. But who's to say? I'm excited for this card. I wanna get it.
Yeah, I can see this in Black Red Aristocrats real easy. So,
and it's whenever one of those things deals combat damage. So it's not like one or more, like a lot of these cards are. It is instance.
yeah,
By instance. So
sure. 6 goblin tokens all do 2 points of damage. You do 12 points of damage. Now, how many do you want to sack, and how many cards would you like to draw? Would you like to draw 6 cards? Yeah. Oh no. This is. I know that there are. It might be a little. It might be more narrow than I'm thinking, but man, I don't think it's that narrow.
Yeah, it's not that narrow for me, who plays this kind of game. So,
right.
What do you got?
Mirkwood Bats.
Okay, yeah.
Now, Mirkwood Bats, 3 and a black for a 2/3 flying bat. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. This is Aristocrats. It's another card to put in the Aristocrats deck. So if you weren't just gaining or losing one, if you weren't just gaining 1 life, or your opponents weren't just losing 1 life, well, now you've just added to it. I get that they're going to keep doing this because this is now a theme for Black. The problem is that it becomes a punishing theme in Commander when you have this many of them that can do it.
Yeah.
Because it used to be with Aristocrats, you'd get 1 or 2 of those out, and you'd ride that for as long as you could, and then if they died, then you had to figure out how to get them back or find something else. We're getting closer and closer to the point where you don't have to do that anymore. So this card's a little annoying, and I've heard talk about it, and it is quite good. A 2/3 flyer for 4 is nothing great, but it's not terrible either. But that ability, just remember, whenever you create or sacrifice a token, so any black deck that uses treasure.
Yeah,
I mean, create 5 treasures. Somebody loses 5 life. Use the treasures. Somebody loses 5 life.
It's each.
Yeah.
So everybody loses 5 life.
Oh, okay, there we go. So it just... What's the other black enchantment that makes a treasure every time a creature dies?
Oh, we've got Revel in Riches.
That's enough.
Yeah, or
Revel in
Pitiless
Riches.
Plunderer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, 2 or 3 creatures die. You get 2 or 3 treasures. Everybody loses 2 or 3 life. Now you use the treasures. Everybody loses 2 or 3 more life. So 2 creatures, say 3 creatures, everybody loses 6 life. You get 3 mana.
Yeah.
And we're talking about treasures. I'm not talking about zombie tokens. I mean, I'm going to throw this one out for you, folks, and then I'm just going to let it go. Tombstone Stairwell makes zombie tokens at the start of your turn, and they leave at the end of the turn.
And not only that, I believe the way that Tombstone is
you
that
sack
it
them.
is their sacrifice.
Yeah, you sack them at the end. So if you've got 3 creatures in your graveyard, you make 3 zombies. Everybody loses 3 life. At the end of the turn, everybody loses the 3 life because you have to sack them. Oh, by the way, this happens again on your opponent's upkeep and on the next one and the next one. So with just 3 creatures in your graveyard, if you've got 3 opponents, everybody's losing 6 life 4 times. So once a round is 24 damage. That's Mirkwood Bats and Tombstone Stairwell with 3 creatures in the graveyard. That's it. That's all. That's not adding in anything else you're doing.
Yeah.
Anyways, upwards and onwards. Andy, what's your next?
My next one is also one that I've heard a lot of people talking about, and I think it is. I think it's not as busted as people are trying to make it out to be. But I think it's because of
the same card.
Yeah, I think it's because of our play group. I think it's because of our meta. It's Orcish Bowmasters. It's 1 and a black for a 1/1 with flash, and whenever Orcish Bowmasters enters the battlefield, and whenever an opponent draws a card, except the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, Orcish Bowmasters deals 1 damage to any target, then amass 1 orc. The reason I don't think that this is that busted is for the same reason I didn't necessarily think that what was the blue, like the Notion Thief, but also the Hull Breacher, they're bad for the format, sure. Like those two specifically, Notion Thief and Hull Breacher. But this is good, but I think that to really see results, you have to have a meta that does do this a lot, because otherwise it's just a damage here and there, and you're making your army bigger. Which I don't know. It's powerful. I'm not saying that it's not. But I could see this doing a whole lot of nothing in a lower power game.
Andy, I'm just going to read my note.
Okay.
I got a little note on the card. It says, with my group, this will be fine.
Yeah.
Most groups, this will be pretty good. And then I thought, if you've got Wheel of Fortune effects, so discard your hand, everybody draws 7. Orcish Bowmasters could get really ugly, because that can do 20 plus damage pretty quick. But I agree with you. This isn't going to discourage anybody from drawing a card, because we're all willing to pay a life to draw a card. Phyrexian Arena, you pay a life to draw a card. Every single black spell where you draw a card, you're always paying at least 1 life to draw that card, and everybody does it.
Yeah.
It's not a deterrent. All it does is it lowers your life total a little bit more.
It's a 1/1. Not to say that I don't want to pull the it dies to Doomblade type of thing, but it's easy to get rid of this. It's easy to get rid of it with your own Orcish Bowmasters.
This is a fun card, at least for me. I could see running this when I know that my play group has a lot of those wheel effects. So if I'm, our good friend John, hi John, John loves playing some level of wheel effect. Everybody gets to draw back up to the full hand size, because quite often he'll run his hand down to almost nothing, and then he gets the biggest benefit on the draw. But this has flash, so John doesn't even have to know I've got it in my hand, and then he can do that. I'll be just like, okay, John, you're going to get to draw 7, but everybody else is too, and you're taking 21. So I hope the 7 cards is worth it.
Or poor Josh, hi Josh, with his Arcanist deck, drawing 3 cards each turn.
Yep. Pay 3 life. That's okay. Josh runs enough life.
But I think
he'll be fine.
Yeah, but I think with this to be a $25 card, it just feels overhyped. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
I can definitely see where this is going to be good in a lot of groups. With our group, it should be just fine. Just fine.
Yeah, now that we've got the heat on our butts, let's talk about a different black card.
Okay. My last one is Shadow of the Enemy. It's 3 black. It's a sorcery. It says exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard. You may cast spells from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. I love cards like this. Like I said, it costs 6, so odds are you're not getting any of the creatures that are in that graveyard out on the same turn you cast it. Or maybe you're getting one of the 2 mana ones. But for the next few turns, you get payoff. I can do this all the time. And this is good for the rest of the game. I mean, it's a sorcery. It goes to the graveyard. It's not as though those exiled cards are going to disappear on you.
Yeah.
And you can pay any color mana. So you can cast it at any time. I love this. I love these slow burn cards that do this. And it just, that sort of thing is what I really get a kick out of. However, I can see this in a lot of other play groups just not being good enough.
Yeah. It's slow.
6 mana, it's slow. You're going to get one more turn with it. I hope you can really make your opponent's cards count. Your opponent's creatures. Sorry, just creatures. Your opponent's creatures count. Because if you don't even have haste, then they're coming out the turn after, and then they still have to wait a turn before they can attack. It's slow, it's clunky, but man, it's got a spot in my heart. I like this card.
Yeah, and I think like with it too, like it relies a lot on your opponent to have things in the graveyard. So like maybe you've already spent the past 5 turns, filling up their graveyard. I think this goes really well in your Tasha decks, or it goes well with Arvinox, the Mind Flayer from the Secret Lair about Stranger Things. Because Arvinox isn't a creature unless you control 3 or more permanents you don't own. But then it's a 9/9. So it's like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, the other benefit is that, if push comes to shove, you've got an opponent who is abusing their graveyard. Well, now you're not. Are you going to use any of those cards? No, but you're not either.
Yeah. It's
I've
expensive. It's expensive for...
there are much, much better ways to do that.
For graveyard hate, but it is definitely like... At least, I like the part where you can spend mana as though of any type.
My first red card, Fall of Care Andros.
Yeah.
It's 2 and a red for an enchantment, and it says whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, amass Orcs X, where X is that excess damage. Folks, all of your mass red damage spells. I mean, Blasphemous Act just became so much more than a 1 mana red sorcery that does 13 damage to each creature. You now have a ridiculously huge orc army because so much of that is excess. Now I appreciate you're probably not getting a whole lot of help from any of your other opponents because this is very red.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's non-combat damage. It's not loss of life from black. It has to be damage, and it can't be combat damage. So this is really going to be red direct damage. So how often is this going to hit? I don't know. But I do think that this is just amazing because all of your red direct damage spells are just that little bit better. Even the lightning bolt that you have to use up, the famous Bolt the Bird line, where you do 3 damage to that Birds of Paradise. Well, now you've also got a 2/2 creature.
Yeah.
This is just that much better. Now, there's another line at the bottom. It says, for 7 and a red, Fall of Care Andros deals 7 damage to target creature. So the idea is that it'll do 7 damage, and obviously you're not going to need 7 to kill it, but the excess will then be added onto your army. Awesome. I don't ever intend to spend 7 mana to do 7 damage to a creature. I'm just saying, I think it's cool. I do think it's narrow, but it's great to see the excess damage not just being tossed into the wind.
Well, I think the ridiculous thing here is compare this, or not even compare, match this up with Toralf, right? Where it says you take that excess non-combat damage and you put it on something else.
Right.
And then if that happens again, you take the excess and put it on something else. So say you do 7 damage to a Birds of Paradise. Now, we'll use the term trample here loosely. It tramples over to another thing, but you're also creating a 6/6. And now you do 6 damage to your next thing and say it's like a 2/2. Now you can add 4 more to that 6/6.
Right.
And it just like it builds up so fast with just Toralf and this card.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily niche, but there are niche cases where it just gets explosive, and that I love that. Think of Crackle with power, like you do some ridiculous numbers with that card.
Oh yeah.
So.
Andy, what's your first red?
My first red was Fall of Karandros.
Excellent.
My next red is, well, I guess my next red is Display of Power, which is an instant. It's red, 1. If anybody knows me and my Galazeth Prismari deck, you know I love copying spells. It says instant. This spell can't be copied. Copy any number of target instant and or sorcery spells. You may choose new targets for the copies. So where this gets absurd is when you have a stack full of instants or sorceries that say Storm. You've got like 6 or 7 copies. Now you can target each copy individually and copy those. So your Storm count, your Storm of, say, Mind's Desire. You've got 6 copies on the stack. You copy it with Display of Power. You've got 12 now. There's not much I can say about it without playing it, but like this spell can't be copied doesn't necessarily feel too restrictive. Like it is just.
Well, I mean, they're just setting it up so that you can't make a copy of it, so that you can then recopy everything. I get why that piece is there. No, this is a great card. I really hadn't thought about it with the Storm count. I kept thinking of the restrictions that were involved.
Yeah,
in the
basically.
First place, but even there, I was thinking that still could be worth it. So
if you're doing a chain of copying, you want to do this one last so that you can just double the amount of copying you've done. It's great.
Right. Spiteful Banditry.
Yeah, we're on the same page, buddy.
Red. There we go. X red for an enchantment. Spiteful Banditry enters the battlefield. It deals X damage to each creature. Oh, were we just talking about Fall of Karandros? I'm just saying. Whenever one or more creatures your opponents control dies, you create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Now, you can Pyroclasm with Spiteful Banditry. You're still only getting 1 treasure. Just to be clear, it's 1 treasure. So that's fine. That's fine. We're not worrying about that too much. What we are, but I mean, X damage to each creature. This card is good, and you're going to get a treasure back. So I look at this and I say, it's not X red, it's X red.
Yeah.
You just happen to need the extra red as the initial cost. So if I put 4 into it, because we're at that point in the game where 4 is about the right amount, I'm going to do 2 damage to each creature. That's going to take out most of the early game stuff. There'll be a couple of 3 toughness or 4 toughness creatures, but for the most part, it's going to clear most of the board. I will certainly get at least 1 treasure. I will certainly get the treasure out of it, and then I can use that treasure either now or the next turn to ramp into other stuff. And it says, whenever one or more of your creatures your opponents control die, you create a treasure token. It only triggers once per turn, not your turn every turn. So if your opponents decide they're going to fight each other and one of their creatures dies, doesn't matter whose, you will be getting a treasure. So it just takes 1 creature to die on each turn. That's all we're asking for here. So I think realistically you should expect to get 2 treasures every round.
Yeah. I really like this card.
Okay.
For obvious reasons. It is currently a $20 card because this set is like a special set. I don't think it needs that second. I don't think it needs the ability triggers only once each turn. I think if they turned it into tapped treasures, maybe they could have gotten rid of that.
Right.
Because red is about like immediacy and like about like like impulse. Like if we're going for like the impulsive nature of red, if it gets like a lot of mana all at once that you can only use once,
right?
Then like, but you've got cards like Galazeth Prismari, you've got cards like Revel in Riches where it just turns those two things solely into like you're getting land out of this. So like I can see where it's coming from, but maybe if it just made tapped treasure, like they did tapped treasure in what was that, New Capenna?
I think so, but I mean, it's essentially Power Stones are doing the tap treasure.
That's true. Yeah, so, I don't know. Like
the difference though is the Power Stones don't leave. So
maybe I'm just like a little like wah baby, but like I just wish it didn't have that last line. I think it would have been fine, or if maybe they made cost a little bit more prohibitive, then get rid of it. But like,
right?
Yeah, I mean, in the very least, it's a 2-mana enchantment that you're just getting dice triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dope card. I'm not gonna say anything else about that.
Oh yeah.
We got green. Green, I don't have much going on, but
I've got 2 in green that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
First one is where's here? Elven Chorus.
Oh.
Elven Chorus is it's a 4-mana enchantment. It's 3 and a green. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Creatures you control have tap. Add 1 mana of any color. Okay, so it has 3 abilities. The last one's the only one I care about. The earlier ones, to me, that just means you get to draw a card, but you only really get to draw that card once. Because that's the one card you would have drawn that you're peeking at every single turn. It's the card you would have drawn. So the only way you're getting to draw another card is if you're casting the creature off the top. I'm not super excited about that part, but creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. I mean, we're playing green. You're going to have a pile of creatures. You're going to then be able to tap your creatures to add mana, and it's any color. So this isn't just green. This can be in your multicolor decks, as long as you can get a few saplings, a few tokens, a few whatever. All of a sudden you're tapping for a pile of mana. My only concern is that you really can't rely on it. This has got to be a bonus, because mass removal just makes this card almost useless. Suddenly you're not getting any benefit. Folks are going to be that much more inclined to take out your creatures, even if you're not attacking with them, just because it's a great way to limit your mana base a little bit.
It's Cryptolith Right with upside, right? Like Cryptolith Right turns all your creatures into mana dorks, but then you also get to look at the top card of your library and cast it as a creature.
Right.
It's effects, like the 3 lines are each from like different cards essentially. Like you've got things from like Vivian, and you've got things from like Cryptolith Right. It's like a fun amalgamation of like exactly what you'd want it to be. And for 4 mana, it's good.
This is right, and this is green, so you're gonna be able to cast this on turn 3.
Yeah.
So if not turn 2. So this will come out fast.
Yeah.
Andy, I want to do my second card right behind this one, and you'll see why as soon as I do it. Fangorn Tree Shepherd.
Yeah.
It costs 4 green, so it's 7 mana. It's a legendary tree folk. It's a 4/10. Tree folk you control have vigilance. Wow, don't care. Whenever 1 or more tree folk you control attack, add twice that much green. Again, don't care. This is all great if you're running a tree folk deck. I wasn't thinking about it as a tree folk deck. You don't lose unspent green mana as steps end, phases end. Okay, now go back to Elven Chorus.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you just wait until the end of your last opponent's turn. Tap all your creatures. You get all that mana. Now it's the start of your turn. Your creatures are untapped. Your land is untapped. And now you can tap all of it again and really go to town. I'm not going to pretend that you're going to get away with doing this even more than once, because, I mean, when people see Elven Chorus and Fangorn Tree Shepherd, they're going to have a good idea what's happening. But I really think that this is a combination you really only need to go around once. If you have ways to untap your creatures or lands on each opponent's turn, I mean, Seedborn Muse is still out there. I know, it's old, it's run down, it's tired. It still works. Things can get very, very ugly.
Yeah.
Very fast with a card like Fangorn where you're just accumulating the mana. That's the reason I picked the two of them. I felt like they worked so well together. So
Fangorn's great.
Yeah.
My green ones, Galadrim Bow is a green green equipment. It's for 2 and a green with flash. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to a target creature you control, untap that creature. Equipped creature gets +1/+2 in reach, which is just it's a fancy combat
surprise
trick.
blocking.
That is some surprise blocking, exactly, which I enjoy. And then my last green one is Peregrine Took, 2 and a green for a 2/3, and if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. So now you think back to Academy Manufactor. Say you make a treasure. So now you're making a treasure, a food, and a clue, and then you're also making 3 more food. You're just making a lot of food. And then you sacrifice 3 foods to draw a card. This is great for Guillaume, because Guillaume, I feel like Guillaume doesn't, on his own, doesn't have enough ways to create foods.
Well, this set certainly helps him along, because, man, everything in here creates food.
There's a lot of food, But I found, as I picked at this card a little bit more and more and more, I was like, there are so many things you can do with this card. And just that bottom line of text is real nice. Because I like when you can use food for not just gaining life. Because, that's helpful. But using food for other things, like drawing a card, is fantastic. Yep. So we've gone through Wooburg, onto, I guess, gold cards and colorless cards, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any gold cards you want to point out?
I have 2.
Oh.
Just 2. The first one is the Balrog, Durin's Bane.
Okay.
It's 5, a black, and a red for a 7/5. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this turn. It has haste. It can't be blocked except by legendary creatures. And when the Balrog dies, destroy target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So you're going to run this in a deck that uses treasure.
Mm-hmm.
So you can spend the treasure to sack 3 treasure,
float
and tap
the 3
1
mana.
land.
Yeah.
You've got it. And then Balrog can come out. It has haste, so immediately a 7/5 that's going to swing. Can only be blocked by, essentially, by your opponent's commander, which is the card they probably don't want to use to block. And when it does die, you destroy an artifact or a creature an opponent controls. There's a little bit of everything here. I really like the way this thing is set up. I really see this running well in treasure decks, and I appreciate that there are other options for this card, but that was the one that came to mind, and that's sort of why I wanted to mention it, because it's not really 7, it's 4.5 or 3.5 mana.
Yeah, each treasure you're using pays for 2 essentially, which is nice.
Yes.
It's a good card. And you get to just go ahead.
It's not exciting. It does a bunch of things. It's really cool. I like it, but it's not tricky in any way. It's not.
I'm excited to see what people are going to do with this. My first gold card is mostly for the flavor. It's Arwen, Mortal Queen, for white, green, and 1. She's a 2/2. Arwen, Mortal Queen enters the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. And then for 1, remove indestructible counter from Arwen. Another target creature gains indestructible till end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on it, and a lifelink counter on that creature, and a +1/+1 and lifelink counter on Arwen. So it's, like, she's giving up her immortality to save a thing once.
Right.
And then, it moves on. But, like, I like that. I think the biggest thing I like here is that you're not sacrificing her by any means. Like, she can still continue on living until she dies. And then if she's in your command zone, then you get to just bring her back out again,
Yeah. And damn, man. Come on. You're playing doubling season. Right? Why can't she come out with 2 indestructible counters? Then she can save somebody and still be good herself.
Yeah.
So the other card I had in mind, Eowyn, Fearless Knight.
Yeah.
This is 2, a red, and a white for a 3/4 human knight with haste. When Eowyn, Fearless Knight enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with greater power. Eowyn's power is 3. Legendary creatures you control gain protection from each of that creature's colors until the end of the turn. This doesn't say that you exile the creature until Eowyn leaves. This doesn't say you exile the creature until the end of the turn. This just says it's exiled. It's gone. One of the colors is white. There are plenty of ways to flicker this card.
Yes.
You can flicker the card twice. Get rid of 2 different creatures. And then Eowyn gets protection from all the colors of those 2 creatures. Plus any other legendary creature you might have if Eowyn isn't your commander.
And she has haste.
And she has haste. So she's going to come down, do this, and immediately charge in, probably unblocked because of what's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only downside here is that you can block with artifact creatures. And Eldrazi.
Yeah.
But.
Yep. I'll take those chances. And I mean, you don't even have to bounce Eowyn. You don't even have to flicker Eowyn. You can bounce her. I mean, she has haste. And if it's your commander, you're not like you're paying the commander tax by recasting it from your hand at the start of your turn.
Yeah.
Bam, bam, bam. Just keep going. And if you've got enough other creatures, and if you have even a handful of other legendary creatures, you're getting through for significant damage. I saw this and I just immediately thought about the flicker ability for this and just oof.
I'm glad she does not fit in Emil.
Yeah, it's probably best that she doesn't. But there are other ways to make this work.
Yeah. My favorite gold card out of this whole set is Gimli Mournful Avenger. For 1 red green, he's a 3/2. Gimli Mournful Avenger has indestructible as long as 2 or more creatures died under your control this turn. So your creatures have to die for him to get indestructible. But whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Gimli. When this ability resolves for the 3rd time, this turn, Gimli fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So you have any sort of cheap or free sack outlet, and you've got small tokens, say. You sacrifice 3 of them, which triggers his first ability, or I guess not triggers his first ability. His first ability is just static. His first ability goes online, so he's indestructible.
Yeah.
He has 3+1 counters, and he fights a thing you don't control. So he's a 6/4 with indestructible. Or no,
6/5.
6/5. I can't do math. Don't worry.
Doesn't matter what his toughness is anyway. He's indestructible.
Exactly.
He's going to do 6 damage to a target creature you don't control.
And then he keeps those +1 counters. So the next turn, he'll be a 6/5. You sack 3 more things. He's a 9/8. And fights a thing. It's just like there's a lot of stupid things going on here. And that's if you choose the sacrifice route. The other route is just attack with so many things all of the time. And if things die, then Gimli gets bigger. He's going to get bigger regardless of how many things die. As long as a thing dies. You know, like, it's for each thing that dies, he gets a +1 counter.
Right.
That's yours.
Yeah, or just something that you borrowed for the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this card. This card is meant for me. Let's do colorless, and then we'll figure out how to talk about the commander cards. We're coming up pretty far. I don't want this episode to be too long, but we'll figure out when to talk about the commander cards, because I really want to talk about them. Some of them are so sweet.
Mm-hmm. I have 5 colorless cards to talk about.
Okay.
However, I'm cheating because I want to talk about the 5 monocolored legendary lands.
Great.
I love this. I love this. Every one of them reads, this land enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature. It taps for the color that you want, and then it's taps some amount of mana. One of them is that color, and tap the land to do something. I am a junkie when it comes to legendary lands. I love them. I love getting as many of them as I can. I love that these ones, if the restriction is enters the battlefield tapped unless you control your commander, that would be good enough for me. And this one just says unless you control a legendary creature. So not only does your commander let it come into the battlefield untapped, but any other legend you also control, or any other legendary creature you also control.
I mean, like, if you're playing at all with the ring, like, you've got a legendary creature if the ring tempted you once, you know?
Right. So I look at this. If you get these in your opening hand, then just play it right away.
Yeah.
First turn, comes into play tapped. Who cares? Unless you've got a Soul Ring in hand, you probably weren't playing anything that first turn anyway.
Yeah.
Fine. So then you just there. Next turn it's untapped. You're good to go. I don't want to play with a lot of come into play tap lands, but I will run some, and these ones are definitely worth it. I mean,
yeah.
The ability doesn't have to be that great for me to be willing to run it. I just don't see this as being that significant a restriction, especially in some of the decks that I tend to build, where I have my commander and maybe 5 other legendary creatures, or 6. I can, these are going to be good in multicolor decks where you've got multiple legends. So you can have a green legendary creature out, but that's good enough for you to get your Mines of Moria, your red legendary land out untapped, because you've got a legendary creature. It doesn't have to be that color. So, I think this is great.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I don't have to figure out, if it's worth putting 2 in the deck. If you're playing a 60-card casual or you're playing standard or whatever else, I don't have to figure that out because I'm playing commander. I'm only getting one of them. I will put it in. That's not an issue. I love these cards. I think they're great.
I've got 3 artifacts here.
Okay.
I'll start
Let's
with
blast through them.
I've got Horn of Gondor.
Okay.
3 mana, legendary artifact. When it enters battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. For 3 and tap, create X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of humans you control. It's what's his face? Krenko, but for humans.
Yeah.
There's, cost with it, but it's also not a creature, which is great. It's a great token generator. We've talked so much about generating tokens this episode, that, I mean, like, this does crazy stuff.
The nice part about these doubling ones, you get to the end of your opponent's turn before your turn is about to start, and spend the 3 and tap it, and you're going to create X1/1s. Let's say you only have 2 humans, 2 human soldier. You only have 2 humans.
Yeah.
Well, you now get 2 human soldier creature tokens. So now you have 4 humans, and now your turn starts. And you can tap again immediately for 3 more mana and do it again, and now you've added 4 more. So now you've got 6 humans, and that was when you started with 2.
No, now you have 8.
You have 8, but you added 6. That's 6 more than you had moments earlier. Now I appreciate that 4 of those can't attack, but they're there. They're there to block, and that kind of thing is stuff that people don't like. A lot of people, when they're looking at your board, they think, okay, he's got 2, he's going to double, it'll go to 4. They don't think about the double again immediately, and a lot of times we don't either. We think of other things, or like, oh, okay, I will save that and wait until later when I should do that, like, or do it now.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Another horn that I have is Horn of the Mark, legendary artifact for 2 mana. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So often you'll be attacking a player with 2 or more creatures.
Yeah.
If you're attacking 3 players with 2 creatures each, this triggers 3 times. So then you look at the top 15 cards. I mean, like, you will be digging through at least 15 cards. It, like, 5 cards is a lot for just an attack trigger. And this is a 2 mana artifact that goes in any deck, or can go in any deck. It just seems fun.
Myriad with this card could just be a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my. My last card is Mithril Coat. It will be saving. Mm-hmm. It'll be what is saving me from the treacherous process of editing this episode. It's 3 mana, legendary artifact, equipment, flash. It has indestructible, and whenever it enters the battlefield, or when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target legendary creature you control. Your commander. Equipped creature has indestructible. It has equip for 3. Equip 3 is great. Like,
so it's an instant. So it's an instant that costs 3 generic that gives your commander indestructible.
Yes.
Permanently.
Yeah.
Because you can't destroy the coat either.
Right. And say somebody swords your creature, then Mithril Coat just falls off, and then you get to put it back on eventually. Mm-hmm. Like,
right.
This card's for real. As we approach the 2-hour mark, there's so much we can talk about with this set, and I'm just super excited for this set. I hope that someday I get to draft it. We're gonna figure out at some point when to talk about reprints. Talk about
it won't be long.
The commander cards.
Yes.
The commander set itself is just something to behold. So I think in the next couple weeks, we've got a break coming up of like the main episodes, but we've got shorter episodes. I think we'll figure out a way to talk about these cards in those. But I wanna thank everyone for hanging out for 110 episodes. This is a surprisingly long amount of time to be hanging out with us, and I thank you. Welcome to summer. We'll be back with a full season, full episode length on the 12th of July. We'll be halfway through July, on our way to, what's the next set? Who knows?
Focused on this one.
Yeah. And I'm excited for what we have planned for next season. It's going to be a lot of fun things going on.
Absolutely.
And thank you again for sticking with us. Thanks for bringing on more listeners, more watchers. Share us with any of your friends who like Magic. They will not be disappointed. If you're not watching us on YouTube, check us out. You get to see beautiful cards on the screen. You get to see our wonderful mugs. You get to watch my hair dry through this whole episode.
You get to watch my hair stand on end through most of the episode.
And we'll be back in a couple weeks as we're on our way again to Eldraine. Wilds of Eldraine is our fall set coming up. Which will probably, I guess, feel a lot like the Lord of the Rings set. But we'll see you next week for sure with a little itty-bitty tiny episode.
A vignette.
A vignette.
Yes, I'm going to make it stick. I'm going to say it every single time.
I'll remember it eventually. So, anyway, we're Temple of the False Pod. We're at Exonaut Optimized, but our play sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Thank you again so much for listening. There's so much I want to say, but have a great night, and may your fifth land be the temple.
Bye!
Wait, before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your fifth land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!